The Battle of the Bulge, 1944 to 1945. After the successful landings in Normandy by the Allies in June 1944, the Allied powers quickly advanced through France. Due to this, they were tired from weeks of combat, and Adolf Hitler knew this and decided that the German military would surprise attack them through the Ardennes forest in Belgium, similar to what he did to great success when he captured France in 1940. The Ardennes was a weak spot in the front, as Allied Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower only planned operations on the northern and southern parts of the line, not in the center where the Ardennes was. Hitler knew that if this attack was a success, he could also capture the critical port of Antwerp, and this would split the Allied front in two. The loss of Antwerp would be a demoralizing blow to the Allies, and if this were to occur, Hitler would try to make separate peace treaties with them and try to turn the Western Allies against the Soviet Union. However, all of these ideas were simply too optimistic, and Hitler's commanders knew that if attention was taken away from the Soviets in the East, who were actively getting closer and closer to Germany, that the results could be catastrophic. Before the attack, the Nazis sent special forces to sabotage the Allied-controlled areas. Despite the warnings from his top commanders, Adolf Hitler ordered the offensive to commence. The attack was made up of over 200,000 German soldiers and nearly 1,000 tanks, all from the 5th and 6th Panzer Armies, as well as the 7th and 15th Armies. These forces attacked the American forces on the 16th of December 1944. The Allied forces were composed of the 6th, 12th, and 21st Army groups, as well as the 1st Allied Airborne Army. The German forces were able to completely catch the Allies by surprise, partly because of the sabotage mentioned earlier. Although the German attack was able to shock the Allies gave them fierce resistance in the process. With the Germans already facing pressure from the east, as well as other parts of the west, they could not spare delays and losses. The 6th Panzer Army was trying to move along the Elsenborn Ridge, where they faced fierce resistance. After being notified of this, General Eisenhower immediately called in for artillery support. After 10 days of fighting and bombardment, the 6th Panzer Army gave up on their efforts to try and get across. Because of this fighting, several towns near the ridge became important, like Saint-Vith. There was intense fighting at Saint-Vith, where the 5th Panzer Army was facing fierce resistance. General Eisenhower called in the 7th Armored Division to support the already present 106th Infantry units. The Panzers and other armored German vehicles were unable to utilize their full power and might due to the freezing conditions, and the Germans finally withdrew from Saint-Vith on the 21st of December 1944. When the threat of being trapped was realized. The Germans held out here long enough for the 82nd Airborne to set up defensive positions around the town that pushed them back near the Amblive River. After the intense fighting at Saint-Vith, another town became critical to both sides. This town was Bastogne. At the same time, General Eisenhower ordered the 7th Armored Division to Saint-Vith. He ordered the 10th Armored Division to Bastogne, and by the 19th, the Allies had many men here, including the 101st Airborne. By the 20th, Bastogne was surrounded by the Germans, whose Luftwaffe bombers bombed the town at night. And by the 26th of December, M4 Sherman tanks and George Patton's 3rd Army arrived in relief in Bastogne to try and help the Allied effort there. After these Allied reinforcements, the German enclosement around Bastogne was no more. The Germans were now in bad shape as they began to run out of fuel and men. The Germans had planned this attack to happen in the winter to hopefully be a challenge to the Allies, but it backfired as the poor weather along with the rough terrain and fierce resistance ruined the chances at a successful German offensive. Also, the aerial weather had cleared, so the mighty Allied air forces could attack without much or any resistance at all. Despite further attempts at changing the tide of the battle, including Luftwaffe bombing and more ground offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, as it was now called, due to a Germans putting a bulge of sorts in the Allied lines, was considered to be over a month after it began on the 16th of January 1945. All in all, the Battle of the Bulge was a massive gamble by Hitler, and one that failed badly. In total, the Allies had around 650,000 total troops fighting for them, around 600,000 US and 50,000 British, while the Germans had around 500,000 men. There were about 90 to 100,000 casualties for the Allies, which could be spared, while the Germans had around 100,000 that could not be spared. After this, the Allies marched to Germany, and Hitler killed himself on the 30th of April 1945, and the Nazis surrendered unconditionally on the 8th of May. The Battle of the Bulge is also the largest battle ever fought in the history of the United States Army. Thanks for watching.